Story time. Now, the story I'm about to tell you guys, I want to first of all condone that e-pranks, electronic pranks, are immoral, they're bad, and you can get in a lot of trouble these days. Now, the story I'm about to tell you took place nearly 20 years ago, so it was a different world, different time. Don't try this kind of thing at home, because nowadays you can get a lot more trouble for doing this kind of stuff than you could way back when I was just a rowdy youngster. Now, today's story I want to share with you, I was in high school, so I was in, I think I was in 10th or 11th grade, and at this point, when it came to the internet, not everybody had the internet, number one, and number two, the people who did, they had dial-up. There was nothing else yet where I lived at. You know, we lived out in the sticks, so you were lucky to even have dial-up. And one weekend, I went to a friend's house, and I had an idea to do an email prank. Now, the victims of this prank, if you will, there's this guy that I went to school with, and he was always running his mouth, and this guy was probably the biggest, and I don't know where he is today, but I would guarantee he's probably still the biggest pro wrestling fan on the planet. This guy was the biggest WWF at the time, biggest fan, that's all he talked about, and then he also always claimed that he was secretly training to be a pro wrestler. And now this is when the Hardy Boys first came out. And he claimed that he knew the Hardys, had been hanging out with the Hardys, went to SummerSlam with the Hardys, secretly beat up the Dudleys, you know, that kind of business. So this guy was really big into it. And then I had a teacher. He was an ROTC teacher, and he was a great teacher. And to this day, one of my favorite teachers I ever had. A great guy, stand-up character. And this guy was really funny, and this guy was super witty. And he had he had a very sarcastic kind of humor that he would say to kids a lot, and even high school kids, they wouldn't always get it, and he had like a chippy kind of humor. So these two butted heads here and there, and I had first period class with this kid, and this guy was a senior at the time, so he was always claiming that he was going to go to another school. And in this case, he was claiming he was going to Manteo High School, which Manteo is, you know, near the Outer Banks, North Carolina, if you're unfamiliar with it. So he was always like, hey! And every time this guy talked, every single time he talked and was getting animated, it was almost like he was cutting a promo for wrestling. And for those of you that don't know, a promo is when the wrestlers in front of the camera talking a bunch of smack about who they're going to wrestle next. So he was always like, hey, listen here, you know, next Friday, rah, rah, rah. So he would always go at this guy and at this teacher, and they'd argue here and there, and it was never nothing too crazy. But he was always claiming he was leaving, going to Manteo. Manteo was a better school, you know, yada, yada, yada. And I don't know for sure, but I think the guy wasn't doing so hot at the school I was at. Like, I think his grades were pretty bad or something, so I don't know. So one weekend, I was with a friend of mine, and was at his house, and we were on the internet, wanted to do an email prank. So what we did is I went on Hotmail and I made a fake email address for this guy. And granted, I had done this prank before, and I'll tell you about the other one another time. So I made a fake email address for it. So I put his name, it was like his name, wwf@hotmail.com. And let's just say we'll call the guy Kyle, even though it wasn't him. Kyle, wwf@hotmail.com. And in this email, I went on this long tirade. I sent it to this teacher. I went on this long tirade about how the school sucked. He was sick of the games being played out there. Teacher, you suck. You know, it was a long email, and it talked so much smack, and it was full of obscenities. It was totally messed up. So I write this long, crazy email, and I send it to the teacher. And that was it. So Monday morning comes around, and I had kind of forgotten I had done it, and this kid didn't show up for school Monday morning. He's not there. So the teacher starts going through the roll. So he's going through, like, and the teacher, when he did the roll, he wouldn't call everybody out. He was just looking around, you know. It's the old paper roll. He's like looking, and I guess he gets down to his name, and he goes, I guess he did go. All right. Keeps going. So that was it for that. About 10 minutes later, this kid rolls in late, and he rolls in late. The door was closed. The door comes flying open. He rolls in late, like, you know, the world was on fire. So he comes, you know, blasted in there, and he comes in all huffy and puffy, and as soon as he comes in, the teacher stops him. He's like, "Stop!" And he turns to the class and he says, "Students, I'd like to welcome you students, we have a new student from Manual High School." He said his name, and this kid got mad, and he didn't know what the joke was about. He was like, he said to the teacher, he's like, "So-and-so, I'm not in the mood." And this teacher snapped on him. He's like, "I'm not in the mood. I got your damn email." And he said, "Damn, got your damn email." And the kid was like, and right there, the class fell dead silent. And you could have heard a pin drop. And this teacher started ripping him up and down. He's like, "I got that email. I saw what you said, blah, blah, blah." And of course, the kid's denying the email, and, you know, rightfully so. He didn't write it. He's just ripping him. Meanwhile, me and my friend are in the back of the classroom, and I am doing everything in my absolute power to not completely lose it. And I got my head down, and I'm biting my lip, pinching myself, and I'm like, you know, giggling real quietly. And there's this girl that sat in front of me, and a couple other girls. They kept turning around, they kept looking at me like, and nobody else was laughing. So they're arguing, and you know, the teacher's threatening to turn them in, and this, that, and the other, and this kid's denying the email. So at that time, because this was a ROTC elective, they had a ROTC office, and it was in another little part of the school. So the teacher said, "You hold on right now." So he goes and he prints this email out, and he comes back and he reads it. Of course, when he read it, he didn't say all the bad words and stuff that were in it, because there was a lot. And he just reads this email. And as he's reading this email, which the whole email is just trashing the teacher and the class and everything else. At that point, it was one of the funniest things that I'd ever seen in my entire life. And of course, this guy's like, "I didn't do it." And it took everything in me not, you know, and a few times I would snicker and just kind of almost howl. And when it got to the end of it, "I didn't do it. They just stopped. And the kid looked right at me and was like, "You." And they accused me. And I denied the crap out of it. I'm like, "No, what are you talking about? I wouldn't do that." And I had a cousin who, he claimed, you know, this guy, I think he works in computers now, but he was like supposed to be the computer guy around there. Even though he didn't know jacking about computers more than anybody else, all the teachers thought he did. So I blamed it on him. I was like, "Man, so-and-so, man, you know he did it. You know he's always messing with the computer stuff. I don't know anything about this." So this kid, every time that he would get animated, since he was such a wrestling fan, he would always do the choke slam thing. So he'd always go. So, you know, he pointed at me and was like, "After school." So I never got the choke slam, no. And I probably deserved the choke slam, but I didn't get one. So that's all that happened there. Nothing came out of it, but it was one of the funniest things that had ever happened at that point when I was in school. There's a lot of times dumb stuff happened, but that one there. So I will say, don't do that. You know, once again, it was 20 years ago, whatever. Nowadays, if you do that, that's identity theft. You can get hemmed up so hard for that. Whatever you do, don't do that. You can really, you know, mess somebody up. So after that PSA. So yeah, there you go. So stay tuned for the next story.